Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. Ancient Rome, the empire of emperors, marble statues, grand villas, and infamous indulgence. You've probably heard stories, orgies, togas, grapes on golden plates. But tonight, we aren't focusing on gladiators, military conquests, or architectural marvels. No, tonight, we're slipping behind the velvet curtains of palaces and private chambers. Tonight's story: what intimacy and sexual life were like for royalty in ancient Rome. But don't worry, this isn't salacious, and it's definitely not fast-paced. This is boring history for sleep. So before we step into the steamy, scandal-soaked corridors of imperial bedrooms, take a moment to like this video and subscribe only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always oddly soothing to see this sleepy little empire of ours stretching across time zones. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Let your muscles loosen, your breath slow, and allow your mind to settle on something distant, detailed, and just absurd enough to distract you from whatever nonsense your modern brain won't stop recycling at 2 a.m. Tonight's journey: what S3X was like for royalty in ancient Rome. Not the average citizen, not the enslaved, not even the senators. No, you're going to sleep tonight as someone much more dangerously positioned close to absolute power, which, as we'll see, has never been particularly healthy for anyone's love life. The Roman Empire was many things: brutal, brilliant, bureaucratic, but also profoundly obsessed with control, public image, and legacy. And yet, within this rigid structure lived the emperors and aristocrats, men and women with almost unchecked access to pleasure, privacy, and the illusion of invincibility. What happened behind the mosaicked doors of their palaces was rarely simple. It was deeply political, often performative, frequently transactional, and sometimes utterly absurd. We'll explore the myths and the realities, because no, Caligula probably didn't make his horse a senator. But yes, he absolutely made things weird. We'll look at the expectations placed on empresses and noble women, the pressures of producing heirs, the politics of marriage, the role of slaves in elite intimacy, and how even gods got dragged into the bedroom as decoration, justification, or divine foreplay. This isn't a story of romance. It's a story of status, of arranged marriages and performative fidelity, of public fertility statues and private power struggles, of emperors who could have anyone and often did but rarely found peace in the process. Over the next 2 hours, we'll follow your footsteps through the silk-lined bedchambers of Augustus, the scandal-filled reigns of Tiberius and Nero, and the quiet, calculated, erotic power of empresses like Livia and Messalina. We'll touch on law, luxury, taboos, and yes, some very uncomfortable furniture. This is a slow, sleepy descent into the past, not to shock, but to observe. You're not the emperor tonight, but you are close enough to hear what happens when ambition, sex, and immortality try to share a mattress. So, lay back, let your thoughts wander from marble halls to moonlit gardens, and prepare to wake up in the next part, somewhere in the past wearing silk, surrounded by statues, and entirely unprepared for what Roman royalty considered a normal night. You wake slowly. Your limbs are warm, heavy, and wrapped in fabric so soft it might as well be woven moonlight. For a few seconds, everything feels luxurious, quiet, until you open your eyes. The ceiling above you is painted with images of Venus nude, lounging among golden doves, her limbs unnaturally perfect, She stares down at you from a sky of pastel clouds and rolling drapery, her expression equal parts flirtatious and bored. And suddenly you remember. You are not waking up in your own bed. You are not in your own century. You are waking up in the private bedchamber of a Roman aristocrat. A very powerful one. You are royalty, or at least adjacent to it. The kind of person with a family name etched into statues, gossiped about in forums, and scrawled on bathroom walls by soldiers who will never meet you but have opinions anyway. The air is warm. Not just naturally warm, but artificially so. A slave must have been up before dawn to tend the underfloor hypercaust system, an ancient version of central heating, stoked with wood and sweat, just to ensure you didn't wake up with cold feet. The room smells like last night's incense. Sweet resin and burned myrrh cling to the silk drapes and your hair. You shift slightly. The sheets are not cotton. Cotton is for the provinces. These are woven silk from the East, imported, expensive, and dyed a scandalous shade of red. In Rome, red isn't just a colour, it's a statement, a seduction, a subtle reminder that you, like these sheets, are meant to be desired, envied, and never, ever affordable. The bed is enormous, not a mattress on a frame, but a wide, low-lying platform with 4 carved posts and a canopy draped with translucent linen. You lie somewhere in the middle, half covered, half exposed, just as the sculptor who decorated your villa imagined you'd look when admired from the doorway. And someone has been admiring. You hear the faintest movement, a rustle of robes, a slipper against the mosaic floor. There are attendants in the room, slaves most likely, trained to be invisible until summoned, yet always present. One stands near the corner, eyes lowered, holding a silver tray with water, figs, and a soft cloth soaked in rose water. Another adjusts the drapes, silently letting in morning light that filters through stained glass panels you don't even remember commissioning. Light, in this room, is curated, diffused, delicate, and never allowed to be harsh. You sit up slowly. The sheet slides off your body like you're in a painting. You're naked, of course. Roman sleepwear, especially for someone of your status, is more of an idea than an outfit. Maybe a light tunica if you're feeling modest. But modesty is not expected of you. Not here. Not now. Your body is sore in odd places, not from labor or illness, but from indulgence. There was wine last night. Too much. Spiced with cinnamon, diluted with honey, and poured from a decanter shaped like Bacchus riding a panther. You remember laughter. Music. A poet whose verses grew more slurred with each toast. And maybe, yes, definitely a dancer from Alexandria. Hired for the evening, gifted for the night, gone by dawn. This is not a one-off. This is routine. Your chamber isn't a bedroom. It's a stage. Every surface is curated, sculpted, adorned. The bedposts are shaped like acanthus leaves curling around the limbs of marble cherubs. The floor mosaics beneath your feet depict the tale of Leda and the Swan, which frankly feels a little on the nose. Even the oil lamp still burning in the corner is suggestively shaped a nude Venus reclining, the flame flickering where modesty might otherwise intervene. You slide your legs over the side of the bed. The floor is warm, but you slip your feet into delicate sandals anyway, decorative, impractical, the kind of footwear no one expects you to walk far in. Royalty, after all, is meant to be carried by servants, by rumour, by history itself. There's a polished bronze mirror resting on a carved table nearby. You catch your reflection and pause. Your hair is tousled, perfumed. Your skin is oiled, not greasy, but deliberately sheen. You look like a statue just shy of marble. Sculpted by genetics, gilded by status. Even your imperfections are fashionable, and yet you're tired. Not from exertion, but from performance. because everything about this life is a performance, even sleep, especially sleep. Your bedding is inspected. Not by you, of course, but someone in your household staff checks the linens each morning for signs of fertility, of infidelity, of whether the gods were kind or cruel during the night. This is not paranoia. This is politics. In Rome, the sheets can speak louder than your words, especially if you're a woman expected to bear heirs, or a man expected to prove his virility not just in private, but often disturbingly in public. There's a knock at the door, not the wooden kind, just a subtle cough from someone waiting to be acknowledged. It's your cubicularius, the servant in charge of your sleeping quarters. A man, always a man, charged with discretion, order, and the management of your most intimate hours. He greets you with a bow and a scroll, messages from other houses, some in wax-sealed cylinders, some scented with lavender or violet, a few with suggestive notes from people you've never met in daylight. One scroll is from a senator's wife, another from a priestess. A third is unsigned but unmistakably scented with cardamom and ambition. All are requests, invitations, promises veiled as poetry. You haven't even finished stretching and already people are trying to get into your bed or back into it, because that's what this is in the Roman elite. Sex isn't always about desire, it's about power, connection, control. Being seen in the right villa with the right person at the right time could elevate your reputation or destroy it. You rise. Someone dresses you, not in a toga. That's for public duties. For now, a simple tunic of Egyptian linen white, sheer, tied with a golden cord. Something that says, yes, I slept well. Yes, I'm still desirable. No, you may not enter unless summoned. You walk to the window. Below, the city stirs. The streets of Rome are waking. Bread ovens fire up. Perfume vendors unpack their jars. And somewhere, a playwright is penning a satire about a person suspiciously like you, only slightly more ridiculous. But up here, in your private chambers, you're already being watched, judged, whispered about, not because of what you've done, but because of what you might do next. And so begins your day, as someone whose bed matters more than their laws, as someone whose pleasure is public record, as royalty in ancient Rome, where sex isn't just personal, it's political. You're technically awake, clothed in silk, and already managing subtle political seduction through scented scrolls before your feet have even touched the steps outside your chamber. But there's a more pressing matter now. You're hungry, or at least you're expected to eat. Royalty in ancient Rome doesn't wake to a continental breakfast laid out by cheerful attendants with gold trays and soft voices. No, your first meal is not designed to satisfy hunger. It's there to remind everyone around you that you are important enough to have things like meals prepared for your pleasure, whether or not you want them. A servant enters with a tray, carefully avoiding eye contact. The silver platter is small, elegant, and unnecessarily ornate. A carved scene of Apollo chasing Daphne adorns its edges, which seems oddly appropriate, as the food upon it is equally elusive. Today's intaculum breakfast, for the Roman elite, consists of 3 olives, 2 dates, a wedge of goat cheese that smells like it's been emotionally neglected, and a piece of barley bread dry enough to file your fingernails on. There's also a small cup of watered wine. Not strong, just enough to remind you that the day has begun and Rome doesn't function sober. The bread is stale, intentionally. Fluffy bread is for festivals or funerals. You chew slowly, each bite an exercise in patience and molar endurance. You dab a bit of honey on it from a golden dish, imported from Hispania, probably stirred with a spoon that cost more than the average plebeian's house. But this food isn't meant to nourish, it's ritual, a way to line your stomach before the day's indulgences begin. Your real meals, those decadent, scandalous, multi-course dinners, where conversation blends with flirtation and business deals are sealed with fig-stained fingers, those come later. For now, breakfast is a whisper of restraint, a polite nod to discipline, because too much, too early, that's how rumors start. The cheese is soft but aggressive. The olives are soaked in something you're told is garum-infused oil, but might just be fermented spite. You finish what's necessary and signal the servant with a small motion. They remove the tray without a word, like ghosts trained in table service. Now, the next ritual, hygiene, which for someone of your rank is both a luxury and a form of theatre. You rise and move through a wide doorway into your barnium, your private bathing suite. It's one of the few privileges that genuinely feels enjoyable. No waiting in line at the public baths. No awkward conversations with senators covered in oil. Just you, steam, and silence. The bath has already been drawn. Heated water flows through pipes fed from an underground cistern, warmed by servants who've been stoking a fire since before sunrise. The marble tub is deep, wide, and framed with tiles showing dolphins, sea nymphs, and a rather muscular Neptune looking pleased with himself. You undress. Again, the tunic is removed by a silent handmaid, folded carefully and taken to be aired. You step into the bath, and immediately your bones sigh. The water is scented, not with modern soaps, but with crushed herbs, thyme, lavender, maybe a hint of mint. They float on the surface like promises. This isn't just bathing, it's branding. A clean body means discipline. A perfumed one suggests taste. And for the elite, being unwashed is not just uncomfortable, it's political suicide. A slave approaches with a strigil, the curved metal tool used to scrape sweat, oil, and last night's regrets from your skin. You raise your arms and let them work. The oil they applied earlier is now removed in long, deliberate strokes, taking with it the residue of excess. A symbolic cleansing. You are fresh, you are reborn, you are available for inspection. Teeth? There's no toothbrush. Instead, a cloth soaked in wine and ash is rubbed gently across your gums, more ritual than hygiene. Your breath smells like a vineyard lit on fire, but at least it doesn't smell like whatever the gladiators reek of. You dry yourself with linen towels warmed over hot stones. Your skin is massaged with new oil, this time scented with rose or saffron, not for your own enjoyment, but because someone, at some point today, will notice. Maybe an ambassador, maybe a lover, maybe the wrong person. In Rome, smell is a language. You don't speak it with your nose, you speak it with your skin. Now dressed again, this time in a fresh tunic, your hair is arranged by a specialist. Yes, a specialist. A tonsтрix, trained in curling, combing, and the dark art of making aristocratic hair appear effortlessly disheveled, while taking exactly 40 minutes to get right. Each curl is placed with surgical precision, each strand dusted with crushed pearls or saffron dust. Why? Because dull hair means a dull household, and in Rome, dull is the first step toward irrelevance. As you sit, eyes half closed while someone adjusts your ear jewelry, you hear two of your slaves whispering, not disobediently, just efficiently. They're discussing the water temperature, whether it was too hot, whether you flinched, whether that means something. You say nothing. You don't need to, because in your world, everything speaks for you: the way you eat, the way you bathe, the perfume on your wrist, and the tilt of your eyebrows during breakfast. And now, as the final touches are added, rings, cuffs, a discreet dab of crushed violet on your temples, you are fully assembled. Not a person, a persona, the curated body of a Roman elite. ready to be seen, ready to be interpreted. There's a final ritual before you leave the cubiculum, the bedroom suite. It's subtle. The cubicularius, your trusted chamberlain, places a small box near your writing table. You know what's inside. Sachets of herbal powder, perfumed oils, and a few tools. They're not discussed aloud, but they are expected. Because when you live in a palace, when your status rests not just on your lineage, but on your allure, your bedroom hygiene isn't just cleanliness. It's a form of currency. One last check in the bronze mirror. You look flawless, polished, powerful, and possibly exhausted already. You haven't even reached the atrium yet, but your body is ready. Your breath is sweetened. Your skin is fragrant. And your reputation? Still intact. At least for now. You're dressed now. Or rather, you've been dressed. Because in ancient Rome, a member of the imperial class does not get dressed any more than a statue decorates itself. There's a ritual to it, a rhythm, a series of practice movements carried out by silent, efficient hands. Your body, once bare and warm from the bath, is now hidden beneath layers that speak volumes without a single word. Your inner tunic is fine linen, bleached to near white and pressed flat as a senator's morals. Over it, a looser outer tunic drapes you in dyed fabric, perhaps saffron, perhaps crimson, if you're bold and politically secure. Colors here are not just decoration, they're declaration. Purple, for instance, is dangerous. Imperial purple or purpura is restricted by law. To wear it without permission is to invite the Senate's wrath and the Emperor's dagger. But you wear a subtly shaded version. Just enough to be noticed, just shy of treason. The material itches slightly. It's made from imported wool, impossibly fine, and about as breathable as a philosophy lecture. The heat doesn't matter. What matters is that it looks expensive, that it folds correctly, that the pleats fall just so, because your body isn't private. Not here, not now. Your body is a performance. A political object, a thing to be admired and assessed. In a world where gossip is currency, clothing is your bank account, visible, wearable, and always open to critique. On your feet, soft leather sandals dyed with indigo. They squeak on the polished floor mosaic as you walk each step, a faint reminder that you're meant to glide, not stomp. Your toenails have been cleaned, your heels scraped smooth with pumice. You have never walked more than a few blocks in your life. You have people for that. But your home, your shelter, that's something else entirely. You live in a domus, or perhaps a villa, depending on whether you're currently in Rome or lounging in one of your country estates. Either way, the rules are the same. Opulence, function, surveillance. Your house is designed to impress and to contain. Its walls are thick, layered with plaster, covered in frescoes of mythological scenes that double as moral lessons and tasteful flexes. One hallway might show Venus rising from the sea, idealized beauty. Another, Mars and Rhea Silvia locked in divine embrace, a not-so-subtle nod to conquest through seduction. Your front atrium is open to the sky, the compluvium catching light and the occasional rainfall, which drains down through a marble basin in the center, the impluvium. You like to sit by it sometimes, watching the reflections ripple, pretending the world outside doesn't exist. But it does. Always. The moment you leave the bedroom, you are on display. Slaves sweep constantly, trailing your footsteps. Body slaves, hair slaves, message slaves. One holds your jewelry box. Another carries a spare robe in case you spill wine. A third just trails behind in case someone needs to be dismissed with a glance. Privacy? It's a fiction. Even your most intimate spaces are shared with someone, usually multiple someones tasked with pretending they saw nothing. Your cubiculum, your bedchamber, is technically private, but it opens directly onto a hallway. There's no lock, no door that you can slam. You can close a curtain. That's about it. And even then, someone will still be there, just beyond the fabric, listening for instructions or confessions. Your villa may seem expansive, but the walls whisper. Conversations drift through thin plaster. Secrets are carried by feet, trained to walk silently. Even the walls might be lying to you. The murals you commissioned last spring, painted by a Greek artist with a background in satire. The hunting scene in the dining room, the one with the boar and the heroic figure, is widely rumored to depict your brother-in-law's latest misadventure, dressed in mythological drag. Everything is symbolism. Everything is commentary. Even your architecture. The dining room triclinium has been renovated 3 times in 2 years. Once for acoustics, once to match a more fashionable villa in Capri, and once because the ceiling cracked under the weight of a marble frieze imported from Egypt. You insisted on keeping it. You also insisted on blaming the architect. The floors are mosaics, tiny tiles, thousands of them, scenes of gods, lovers, warriors, and the occasional self-portrait buried in the pattern like a secret. Some guests have noticed. Most are too drunk by the 3rd course to care. Your walls are painted, not wallpapered. Rome doesn't do subtle. The reds are rich and deep Pompeian red. They call it mineral-based and mixed with wax. They absorb torchlight and shimmer like skin. You run your hand across a panel showing the judgment of Paris and wonder if anyone ever looked that indecisive in real life while choosing between 3 naked goddesses. The light inside your villa is complicated. Torches in sconces, oil lamps in every corner, sunlight filtered through thin sheets of mica or carefully shaped openings that let in just enough warmth without inviting the entire street to stare in. But shadows gather regardless, especially at night. You've walked through your home in silence, past the impluvium, past the lararium, your household shrine, where the household gods look down with polite indifference. You passed your study, where scrolls are stacked like promises you'll never keep. You passed the slave quarters, where laughter abruptly stopped when your footsteps approached. Now you're in the peristyle, the inner garden. The air smells of citrus and damp earth. Statues of fawns and cupids guard every corner. And yet, the silence feels heavy, because this isn't a home, not really. This is a monument you're forced to live inside. And even the walls know things you wish they didn't. You remember last spring, when the emperor visited. Not officially, of course, just casually. An informal stop on the way to the Palatine. He didn't stay long, just long enough to comment on the width of your columns and the acoustics of your bath. Just long enough to compliment your wife's taste in floral arrangement. She wasn't there. She was in Naples. You nodded, smiled, complimented his cloak. You've since repainted the atrium. Twice. There's a phrase the slaves use when they think you're not listening. Domus sine silentio non est domus. A house without silence is no house at all. But you live in noise, in whispers, in the constant scrape of sandals on mosaic, the clang of bronze doors, the soft cough of someone just outside the curtain. You are surrounded by luxury, and none of it belongs to you, because in Rome, a royal body is a public one. A royal house is an echo chamber, and every column casts a shadow deep enough to bury the things you'd rather forget. So tonight, when the torches are lit and the guests arrive for the evening feast, they will admire your walls, your fabrics, your scent, your sandals, but only you will know how hollow these things sound in the dark. Now that you're bathed, dressed, perfumed, and properly wrapped in 6 layers of status, it's time to begin your workday. And no, before you even think it, royalty in ancient Rome does not mean sleeping in until noon and then drifting between wine cups and pillow talk. That's for the poets. Or for emperors so far gone in self-delusion They forget that Rome can still turn on them with terrifying efficiency. You're not a god, not officially. You're a high-ranking member of the aristocracy, perhaps even in the bloodline of an emperor, if not by birth, then by marriage or suspicion, which means your day begins with obligations, and those obligations begin with appearances. You don't toil in fields, you don't bake bread, you don't swing hammers, but you work. Constantly, endlessly, invisibly. Your labor is optics. Your survival is performance. And your tools? A well-timed smile, a passing comment, a strategically offered fig at a banquet that reminds a senator's wife that you're still present, relevant, desirable, if not in body, then at least in positioning. This morning, you begin with a salutatio, the formal reception of your clients. These are the men, lesser men, who arrive in droves to your atrium, just after sunrise, hoping to bask in your patronage. They want favors, legal help, business tips. Mostly, they just want to be seen with you. They arrive in togas, dusty from the street, some holding small gifts. Others bow too deeply. One brings a poem badly written and clearly plagiarized and reads it aloud with all the solemnity of a priest delivering last rites. You nod, you murmur, you smile, and every muscle in your face is tired before breakfast is even cold. This is your survival work. The careful maintenance of power that no one sees, but everyone expects. Behind you, standing still as marble, is your nomenclator. His job is to remember names, faces, details. He whispers into your ear, quietly reminding you that the man you're shaking hands with is currently embroiled in a property dispute, and that his wife is the cousin of the praetor who you need to stay in good favor with. Every greeting is a negotiation. Every compliment is an investment. You finish your salutatio by handing out the daily sportula, a purse of coins for each client. A token, a transaction, a reminder. You are useful to them, and they are useful to you. And then the real meetings begin. Because unlike your clients, the people who truly matter don't come to your house. You go to them. You're carried through the streets in a litter 4 strong slaves, lifting your curtained sedan chair as you glide above the filth and noise of the city. Rome smells like ambition, urine, roasted chickpeas, and disappointment. You pretend not to notice. You keep your posture perfect. One bad slouch, and the man in the next villa might start telling everyone you're ill, or worse, aging. Your first stop, the house of a senator, not for politics, for marriage. He has a daughter, you have a son, or perhaps it's the reverse. It doesn't matter. What matters is the alliance. She is 12, he is 14. Their marriage won't be consummated for years legally, but the contracts, those are very adult indeed. Dowries, land, future voting block, promises whispered behind closed doors while the children are paraded like livestock at auction. You smile, you sip watered wine, you compliment the girl's flute playing, though you suspect her hands are shaking from fear. You understand your own marriage was arranged when you were younger than her. You leave after an hour of polite conversation and indirect threats disguised as good wishes. Your next stop, the temple, not for worship, but for visibility. In Rome, even the gods are watching. You appear at the temple of Venus, appropriate given your reputation. You leave an offering, not coins, not flowers, a small gold ring, slipped into the hands of the statue by your attendant. It's meant to be seen, a quiet message to the city. You're still grateful to the goddess of love. You're still in her favor. And that rumor last week, the one about the poet, the scandal in the garden, the overheard confession from the wife of a general, forgotten. Because, look, you're here. You're praying. You're holy. Your day continues. You attend a public reading. Some philosopher's nephew is debuting his work, a treatise on morality and empire. You barely stay awake, but you applaud at the right times. You whisper something flattering to the old widow beside you. She laughs too loudly. That's good. Let people see you being kind, because kindness, in your position, is as calculated as cruelty. You return home just before the sun begins to dip low. The day has been long, not hard by any labourer's standards, but exhausting all the same. You're tired, not from running, but from being watched. That's the real work of Roman nobility. Being observed, being scrutinized, every interaction tracked, dissected, retold. You don't toil in fields, but you tend to your image like a farmer tends vines. Prune here, fertilize there. Watch carefully for rot, because rot spreads quickly in this city, and when it reaches you, it doesn't kill you all at once. It starves you of invitations, of favors, of glances, of relevance. You escape to your study for a moment of quiet. Scrolls are piled high. Messages from allies. Invitations from people who pretend not to hate you. One is scented with cinnamon, a name you recognize instantly. The wife of a military prefect, recently widowed, or so she says. You tuck the scroll away. Later, for now, you let yourself breathe. The curtains flutter in the evening breeze. The sounds of Rome float in chariots, barking dogs, someone yelling in the distance about a lost sandal. You think briefly about what your life might have been like if you had been born poor. Would it have been harder? Yes. Would it have been lonelier? Maybe not. But there's no going back. You live on a knife's edge, dressed in silk and surrounded by marble. Your enemies send wine. Your friends write poetry. Everyone smiles, and every smile is a blade. Because being royal in Rome means laboring constantly, not with your hands, but with your soul. And it means knowing that at any moment, the crowd that loves you can also demand your blood. As the sun lowers over Rome's tiled rooftops, and your shadow grows long against your villa's painted walls, you feel it the part of the day that turns reflective, uncertain. The gold fades from the mosaics. The sounds of the city slow down. And the invisible world, the one beyond politics, silk, and staged affection, begins to whisper again. Because for all your marble, your jewelry, your name etched into law, and echoed in courtyards, you are still Roman, which means you are still afraid of the gods. You live, breathe, and sleep under a dense network of belief, a world where nothing is just coincidence. A dream, a broken dish, a stuttered step, all of it has meaning. Everything, absolutely everything, might be a message from the divine. And those gods, they're not gentle, they are not always wise, and they are definitely not discreet. Your house has a lararium, a shrine to your household gods. You pass it several times a day. It's a small niche in the wall, decorated with tiny statues. Your lares and penates, the spirits that guard your home, hearth, food and family. You light incense to them every morning, or rather, your slave does. But still the gesture counts. You nod in their direction when you walk past. You whisper their names sometimes, softly, especially after a bad dream. There are other gods too, of course. Too many, really. A whole divine bureaucracy of them, layered and overlapping, each one with specific interests, moods, and jealousies. Venus governs love, yes, but not the same love as Juno, who handles marriage. Mars favors bold action, but Fortuna can reverse his favor with one sneeze and a poorly timed coin toss. And your body doesn't just belong to you, it belongs to them. Sex in Rome isn't just an act, it's a transaction with the divine. Every touch, every moan, every conception is woven into a cosmic ledger. Did you honor the right gods before bed? Did you offend Juno by indulging too freely during Saturnalia? Did you sleep with someone under the wrong moon phase, thereby inviting chaos into your household? It happens more often than you'd think, and no one is immune. There's a story you heard once of an aristocratic woman who forgot to make an offering before her wedding night. She conceived immediately. The child was born with a twisted foot and a strange birthmark shaped like a lizard. Some said it was bad luck. Others whispered she'd seduced a man wearing the wrong amulet. Still others suggested it was divine punishment from Priapus, a rustic god of fertility who delights in unexpected consequences. You believed the last one. You believed too many things. You were raised to. Your nursemaid taught you that sleeping with your back to a window invites spirit. Your uncle warned you never to pass a certain column in the forum without touching the base. It was struck by lightning during a scandalous trial. Even now, when you light a lamp at night, you mutter a phrase under your breath, just in case. You don't know what it means, but your grandmother said it was older than Jupiter himself. In Rome, belief isn't a matter of faith, it's survival. You make an offering to Mercury before writing love letters. He governs communication and commerce. One wrong word, and you might accidentally propose marriage when you meant to suggest a private dinner. You offer honey and milk to Venus before bathing. You never wear emeralds near the temple of Juno. You avoid cats. You never eat figs on the Ides. You once paid a haruspex, a priest who reads omens in animal entrails to determine whether the man courting your cousin was sincere. The priest declared the liver oddly shaped, and the courtship ended the same day. He married a Vestal virgin instead, and was later exiled. You still have the liver. It's dried, wrapped in cloth, kept in a box beneath your jewelry, just in case. And yet, for all your rituals, you know the gods are fickle. Just look at the emperors. Tiberius withdrew to Capri and filled his palace with astrologers and dream interpreters. Nero believed he was Apollo reborn. Caligula built a temple to himself and demanded worship. Even Augustus controlled, intelligent, master of perception, consulted soothsayers before major battles, and refused to sleep on unlucky days. These were the most powerful men in the world, and they were terrified, just like you. But it's not just the gods you fear, it's the dead. Your ancestors, they are everywhere, watching, judging. You are required by tradition, by law, by invisible pressure, to honor your family's dead. You speak their names aloud during certain festivals. You keep their busts in your atrium, watching over your meals and conversations. You tell stories about them to visitors, flattering and edited versions. Because even in death, their reputations affect yours. And if you don't honor them, if you let the candles burn out, if you forget the festival of Parentalia, or fail to visit their tombs, they remember and they return. There are stories of noble women who saw their grandfathers standing at the end of their beds, frowning, of men who went impotent after mocking their uncle's funeral rites, of entire households cursed because a child dropped a bone during Lemuria, the festival of angry spirits. You observe these rituals carefully. You toss beans over your shoulder in silence, as required. You never speak the names of the dead after sundown. You sleep with a small charm beneath your pillow. It's shaped like a phallus, yes, really, and it's meant to ward off envy, illness, and dream-invading ghosts. Everyone has one. It's not vulgar. It's necessary. You wear amulets during sex. You sprinkle salt on your sheets. You place a small statue of a laughing satyr near your bed to protect against invidia, the evil eye cast by jealous lovers. Because love in Rome is dangerous. It can unmake you. Affection invites attention. Desire invites scrutiny. And passion, true passion, is the sort of thing that draws the eyes of gods, demons, and your least favorite aunt. And when those eyes land on you, you need all the charms you can get. So you live surrounded by them, worn on your wrist, hidden in your robe, whispered into your ears as you fall asleep. Because even in your bed of silk and perfume, you are never truly alone. The sun is low now, casting amber light across the tiled roofs of the Palatine Hill. Rome begins to soften just a little around the edges. The heat fades. The marketplace grows quieter. The streets swell not with labourers, but with laughter, gossip, and the clink of amphorae uncorked. For the plebs, the day ends with bread, olives, and maybe a boiled egg, if fortune smiled. But for you, the day is just getting started, because you are expected at dinner, and Roman dinner is not a meal, it's a performance. Tonight's scena will be held at your own villa, one of the larger salons, the one with the fresco of Bacchus reclining on a leopard, wine cup raised, eyes half closed, as if he too can barely tolerate one more senator quoting Homer before dessert. The preparations have taken all day. The cooks have been boiling, roasting, stuffing, slicing, and sprinkling with an obsessive attention to detail. Exotic ingredients are a must. Flamingo tongue, perhaps. Sea urchins from the Bay of Neapolis. Dormice stuffed, of course with herbs, pine nuts, and a whisper of honey. None of it is for nourishment. This is food as flex, food as flirtation, food as social currency. You are reclining on a couch lectus, tilted just so, elbow resting on embroidered cushions, back slightly arched to elongate the spine. Your feet are bare, painted, perfumed. You've been arranged more than seated. Because in Rome, your body is not for comfort. It's for commentary. Your guests are arriving. The guest list is a spiderweb of alliances, rivalries, and potential scandal. You've invited a minor senator whose uncle controls the grain supply, a poet whose verses are sharper than his appetite, a general's widow who pretends to mourn and dresses exclusively in transparent linen, and a young Greek philosopher who has been sleeping with someone, possibly you, possibly your brother. Everyone knows, no one says. That's what makes it entertaining. They recline with you, on couches arranged in a horseshoe around a low table. Slaves bring warm towels for hands. Then amphorae of wine cut with water, lightly spiced, poured into cups made of glass so thin it trembles in the candlelight. The food begins in waves. First, eggs, oysters, light things, meant to whet the appetite, not satisfy it. Then come the meats. Duck in fig sauce, pork stuffed with dates, fish presented with its own face still attached, decorated with a crown of rosemary and judgment. Everything is overdone because subtlety in Rome is for cowards and accountants. Between courses, music plays. A flute, a lyre. A girl whose entire job is to sing in a voice so high and tremulous it sounds like someone whispering into the rim of a wine goblet. There is laughter, there is pretense, there is always someone pretending not to be watching someone else. Entertainment varies. Sometimes it's dancing Greeks imported for the purpose, half-dressed, shimmering with oil. Sometimes it's poetry often terrible, but made bearable by wine and the possibility that the poet will say something accidentally revealing. Tonight, however, it's a mime. A masked man in a tunic who silently performs a story about Venus and Mars, caught in a net, naked, tangled, exposed to the laughter of the gods. Everyone laughs, some nervously, because the story is mythological, yes, but also personal. You know exactly which recent scandal this fictional tale is mocking. You watch the widow's expression harden slightly, then melt again under the weight of a second cup of Falernian wine. The drinks are stronger now, and so is the flirting. Roman elite society is built on suggestion. Marriages are political, but glances, touches, those are where the true decisions are made. The seating is strategic. That man, yes, the one leaning just a little too close, he's not here for conversation. He's here because of a letter you received 3 days ago, folded discreetly, perfumed with jasmine. He wrote it with his left hand to disguise the script, but the message was clear, and now he's here, smiling, pouring your wine for you, though it's technically a slave's job. His hand brushes yours, accidentally, twice. You pretend not to notice, but you do. Everyone does, and that's the game, because Roman dinners don't end with dessert. They end with decisions. For some, it's about politics. For others, pleasure. For most, it's both. As the final course is cleared, fruits, nuts, candied violets, you feel the energy in the room shift. Some guests rise, others linger. Some, like the poet, are too drunk to move. He's curled on a couch, reciting verses to the ceiling about a woman who does not love him and a God who never will. But others stay on purpose. One woman leans in and says she lost an earring. Would you help her search for it in the garden? A man claims the hallway fresco reminds him of his childhood villa and asks if you'd walk him past it alone. These are not subtle invitations. They're not supposed to be, because by now, the wine has blurred the edges of social ritual. The room smells of crushed grapes, perfume, and anticipation. You reset slowly, as if stretching, as if considering, and make eye contact with no one in particular, but just long enough to be interpreted 6 different ways by every person in the room. A final toast is offered. To Bacchus, someone says, and to the company of the divine. There is laughter, but not too much, because even the jokes are a test. And so, as the lamps are trimmed and the guests begin to trickle out, some stumbling, some smirking, you remain in place, reclining, composed. You will rise only when you wish, and when you do, someone will follow. That too is part of the ritual. Roman dinner is not for sustenance, it is for spectacle. And when it's over, the city may sleep, but your night has only begun. You're awake again, not because you meant to be, but because something in your body isn't quite right. It starts as a dull ache, deep below the ribs, then a twist, a pressure behind the eyes, a slight tremble in the fingertips. You shift in the dark, listening to your own breath, trying to pretend it's nothing, but it never is. Not in Rome. In a world without antibiotics, anesthesia, antiseptic, or even a firm grasp of internal anatomy, every pain is a warning, every cough a possible omen, every missed period, every strange rash, every feverish flush might be the beginning of the end. And you noble, perfumed, painted, powerful, are not immune. You call for your medicus. He arrives quickly. They always do. Doctors in this world are part healer, part sorcerer, part family scandal management. He checks your pulse not with a watch, of course, but with fingers trained by tradition. He sniffs your breath. He squints at your eyes by lamplight. Then, delicately, he asks what you last ate. You lie. Everyone lies. No one wants to admit to the oysters. Still, he knows. He always knows. You're lucky tonight. It's likely food poisoning, not the plague, not typhoid, not the wasting fever that took your cousin last spring quietly, behind closed curtains while the household burned bay leaves and cried without sound. Still, you're shaken, and for good reason, because even here, in your palatial estate with its heated floors and marble statues, death is never far away. It lingers under every bed. It waits in every bathhouse. It rides into town on the breath of travelers, on the bite of a mosquito, on the edge of a poorly cleaned blade. You've seen it firsthand. A friend complaining of stomach cramps at dinner, dead by morning. Another who slipped in the baths, broke his hip, and developed a fever so high they say he spoke in languages no one recognized before slipping into silence. There's no safety net, no hospital, only prayers, poultices, and whatever herbal remedy your physician picked from the garden this week. And Rome is a city saturated with fear of it. You burn incense to Asclepius, god of medicine. You wear a charm shaped like a beetle or a phallus or a fig, hoping its power will shield you. You follow omens. Avoid unlucky days. You sleep facing east. You never walk past cemeteries on your birthday. You bribe the gods with wine and honey and gold, and sometimes with silence, because death in Rome is both a biological certainty and a cosmic accusation. If you fall ill, someone will wonder why. What god did you offend? What ancestor did you forget? What enemy slipped something into your cup when you weren't looking? Because poisoning is very much real, especially for people like you. Royal blood makes you a target. You're not a person. You're a prize. You're the hinge upon which several other people's ambitions swing. So if you get sick, seriously sick, your enemies will pretend to be concerned. They'll send offerings, slaves bearing oranges, poets composing hopeful verses. But privately, they're celebrating because the moment you falter, they rise. This is why Roman medicine is so aggressive. It isn't about healing, it's about survival. Your physician is already preparing a mixture of honey, vinegar, pepper, and something unidentifiable that smells like damp bark and iron. You ask what it is. He mutters something about balancing humours. You stop asking, because the more you know, the worse it gets. Roman doctors believe in the 4 humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. An imbalance, they say, causes all illness. Too much black bile, melancholy, lethargy. Too much yellow bile, fever, rage. Too much blood? Well, that just makes you dangerously cheerful. The solution? Drain it. Let it out. Bloodletting. They tie a cloth around your arm. You look away. The blade is small, but its consequences never are. You've done this before. Everyone has. It doesn't help, but at least it makes the doctor feel useful. If that doesn't work, there are purgatives. Vomiting, laxatives, emetics so powerful they make your eyes water before you've even swallowed. The idea is simple. Flush the body, cleanse it of the illness. It's crude, violent, sometimes effective, often not. You remember once being prescribed a live spider mashed into wine. You drank it. It didn't help, but you're still here. So maybe it did. Not all remedies are this horrifying. Some are almost soothing. Baths in lavender and milk, herbal compresses, cool sheets, prayers muttered while your forehead is stroked. But these comforts are rare, because most Roman medicine is a delicate dance between hope and superstition. Your physician is muttering again, this time to the gods. He gestures in the air, makes a sign to ward off misfortune. Your slave, standing in the corner, silently places a fresh laurel branch by your bedside. It's not for scent, it's for protection, in case the gods are watching, which of course they are. They always are. You lie back, sipping whatever foul liquid has been handed to you. The room sways gently. The oil lamp flickers. Your stomach still hurts, but your mind is quieter now. Not calm, just quieter. Because even though this is probably minor, probably temporary, you know too well how fast the slope can slide. And once it does, nothing can stop it. Not your wealth, not your prayers, not your beauty, or your charm, or the senator who just offered his 3rd daughter's hand in marriage. Once you're really sick, Rome forgets your face faster than you'd believe. So you whisper a name to yourself, just one. Someone you trust. Someone who will close the curtains if it comes to that. Someone who won't let the poets turn your death into a punchline, just in case. Because death, in ancient Rome, is always listening, and it's never more interested than when you're beautiful. You rise late the next morning, still weak, but no longer shivering. The physician has left. The laurel branch remains. But today is not about politics or medicine or poetry. Not directly. Today, your house is filled with women. Some are guests, others family. Many are here simply because they must be daughters, wives, slaves, midwives, attendants, cousins, orbiting in and out of relevance depending on the shape of your fortune. In Rome, women exist at the center of private life and at the edges of everything else. But do not mistake silence for powerlessness. These women draped in linen, seated in shaded courtyards, sipping watered wine, while children run barefoot through the peristyle garden, hold the empire together with their quiet endurance. A Roman woman of noble blood cannot vote. She cannot hold office. She is excluded from formal power, but she marries it, shapes it, influences it from the inside. Your own mother, for example, never raised her voice. She never left the house alone. She spoke in phrases woven from courtesy and ambiguity. But when your father wanted to rise in the Senate, it was your mother who arranged the dinner, who whispered to the wives of other men, who knew exactly which scandals to mention and which to ignore. She was terrifying and completely invisible to history. That's the Roman way. A noble woman's job is not to shine. It's to reflect her husband's status, her father's dignity, her son's future career. Her body is not her own. It is a bridge between families, an instrument of diplomacy, a vessel for heirs, and the rules for her are strict. Chastity before marriage, fertility after, loyalty always. Her fidelity is public business. Her reproductive health, tracked like imperial grain. You've seen the signs. A senator's wife who stopped appearing at temple, rumors that she bled too much after her fourth child, a whisper that she might have taken a potion, the kind not approved by the gods. She vanishes from public life, no explanation given, no explanation needed. And what of love? Love is a foreign concept here. It's tolerated in poetry, mocked in satire, but in daily life, love is inconvenient. Marriages are arranged before the girl can finish her education. She's taught how to sit, how to pour wine, how to accept her role as the legal possession of her husband. The manus literally, hand, transfers from father to groom. One man owns her, then another. Even a powerful empress is subject to these laws. Livia, wife of Augustus, was more politically skilled than most senators, but her influence came only through her role as wife, mother, and eventually grandmother to future emperors. She ruled from the shadows, not the throne. Still, women learn to work with what they're allowed. They write letters, manage households, organize dinners that double as Senate strategy sessions. And when no one is watching, they conspire. Affairs happen, of course, carefully. Coded glances, discreet messages sent with perfume on parchment, a brooch left on the wrong couch, a slave who knows how to keep quiet. But the risks are real. If caught, a woman can be divorced, exiled, or worse, killed by her father or husband without trial. The laws permit it. The neighbors expect it. Honor, they say, must be preserved. Yet the men, they are not held to the same standard. Your brother has 3 children, none by his wife. Your cousin keeps a Syrian concubine in the guest quarters, and everyone knows the general's latest campaign was less about Gaul and more about escaping his new bride's stammer. Rome is not fair, but Roman women know this, and they adapt. Now look at the children, running barefoot through the garden, laughing in the sun, dragging small carts carved like lions. They look happy, free, but even they are not immune from the weight of legacy. A Roman child of noble birth is born into expectation. The moment the umbilical cord is cut, the math begins. Who will they marry? What alliances can they form? Will the girl be pretty enough to draw offers? Will the boy be strong enough to lead troops, write law, speak in court. Childhood is short, especially for the poor. But even among the elite, it's more preparation than play. Boys are educated early. Greek tutors teach them philosophy, rhetoric, law. Girls, they learn modesty, handcraft, hosting, the art of speaking without speaking too much. And both boys and girls are trained formally or otherwise in how to endure pain, because pain is inevitable. Illness claims many before age 5. Dental infections, fevers, birth defects, poor sanitation, even in the wealthiest homes, a cough can spiral into silence. You remember the funeral of your sister's second son. He was 4. He had a dimple and a laugh like a flute. He tripped during a game, split his lip. The fever came 2 days later. He died before the priest arrived. The family wailed. The women tore their tunics. The men looked at the floor and drank too much wine. And then life went on, because it must. That's the Roman way. Grief is real, but public mourning is controlled. Too much sorrow is seen as weakness. Too much silence? Suspicious. There's a balance to it. Even in death, there's a performance. So the children run. They smile. They chase birds through the garden. They are praised, then corrected, then praised again. And you wonder how many will reach adulthood? How many will survive their first childbirth? How many will live long enough to be painted in oil and called ancestor by someone who has no idea who they really were? This is family life in Rome. Sacred, beautiful, terrifying. It is built on duty, tradition, and the ever-present knowledge that none of it is truly safe. Not the women, not the children, not the house that shelters them. Because in the end, Roman families are not designed for comfort. They are built to last, even if the people inside them don't. The sun is past its peak now, and the shadows lengthen like stretched-out secrets. You've changed robes again. The last one had a faint stain of wine, and someone might notice. In Rome, someone always notices. But now, the mood is different. The morning was performance. The midday meal was pleasure. But afternoon is for reckoning. This is when the frayed edges of aristocracy become visible, when the doors close and real decisions, ugly ones, are made. Your household is quiet. Too quiet. Something has gone wrong. It starts with a whisper between 2 slaves. Then the sudden silence of a servant who won't meet your eyes. And then, finally, a knock. Not the gentle kind. The kind with tension behind it. You allow them in. It's your steward. Pale. Sweating. He informs you that a debt has gone unpaid. Not yours, of course. A cousin. But he used your name. Your seal. It's not technically a crime, but it will be treated like one. This is the quiet violence of Roman society. Scandal is currency, and someone just forged your signature. You don't scream. You sit. You inhale. And then you do what every noble must do in moments like this. You choose a scapegoat. A slave will take the fall. Someone minor. Someone replaceable. Someone who likely had nothing to do with it. This is how justice works here, not through truth, but through necessity. If you don't punish someone, it looks like you're hiding something. If you punish the wrong person, it shows strength, a demonstration. That's what people want. And so, with a wave of your hand, a man is taken. He'll be whipped or sent to the quarry. Or, if the rumors spread too far, executed quietly. And this entire affair will vanish, because that is how Rome survives itself. Through controlled cruelty and calculated mercy. Outside, the streets are louder now. Disputes erupt everywhere in this city, but none of them matter unless the wrong people overhear. A merchant is shouting at a guard, something about stolen grain. A woman pulls her son away from the fray, whispering prayers to the gods of crossroads. An old man throws a rotten apple at a tax collector and disappears into an alley before anyone can catch him. This is normal. This is every day. Rome is beautiful, yes. Grand, yes. But underneath that beauty, it's brutal. The legal system? Complex, impressive, and utterly bendable. If you're poor, justice is swift and almost always painful. If you're powerful, it's a chess game. Trials delayed, witnesses coached, evidence lost, then rediscovered. Every courtroom a theater, every punishment a message. You've seen it, you've used it. There was that incident last year, the slave girl who knew too much about a senator's private habits. They called her a thief. She was found guilty in less than a day. Beaten, sold, gone. The senator never thanked you directly, but a month later, your brother's business suddenly received a generous contract from the state. Coincidence? In Rome? Never. And it's not just legal violence. There's social warfare too. Just as cruel, just as personal. A rumor here, a misquoted letter there, a nod at dinner that implies you've lost favor with the emperor even if you haven't. Suddenly, invitations dry up. Your name is no longer spoken with respect. You become interesting in the wrong way. You've seen it happen to lovers, to rivals, to your own uncle who made the mistake of correcting a praetor in public. He wasn't punished. No, nothing so obvious. But slowly, over months, he was erased. No one came to his dinners. No one quoted him. Eventually, even his slaves stopped looking him in the eye. And now, he sits alone in a countryside villa, writing letters that no one reads. That's Rome's favorite execution method. Silence. But when silence doesn't work, there are other tools. The whip, the prison, the arena. Yes, the arena. You've attended more executions than you can count. Most are public. Spectacle, they call it. Justice for the masses. A thief devoured by leopards. A rebel tied to a stake. A woman accused of witchcraft burned. Though no one could explain exactly what she'd done. It's not about guilt, it's about optics. And it's always worse for the vulnerable. Slaves, freedmen, foreigners. But don't let yourself feel too secure. Even the elite bleed when they fall. Just look at Sejanus, once the most powerful man in Rome after Tiberius. Then suddenly gone. Arrested. Executed. His family hunted. Statues torn down. His name erased from public records. No trial. Just a shift in the wind. That's the thing about Roman power. You don't hold it. You borrow it from the Senate, from the people, from the gods. And any one of them might decide, in the heat of an afternoon, that you no longer deserve it. So you remain careful. You avoid certain topics at dinner. You send small gifts to senators' wives, nothing too obvious. You compliment a man's sandals, knowing full well you hate him. You hire tutors for your son and guards for your bedroom, because safety is not guaranteed. Not even here, not even now. And as the afternoon wanes, and the shadows stretch across the marble, you feel it in your bones. Rome is watching you, always. And Rome has never blinked. The sun is gone. Rome doesn't darken gradually. It drops suddenly, like a blade. One moment the sky is a dusty gold. The next it is indigo, vast and silent, with stars sharp enough to cut. You're standing near the window, still in your evening tunic, watching the city flicker to life, not with electricity, but with flame. Braziers glow in the courtyards. Torches line the streets. Oil lamps wink from windows like the eyes of gods too bored to intervene. And still, you hesitate to sleep. Because night, in ancient Rome, is not restful. It is dangerous. You know this. Everyone does. No matter how rich, no matter how perfumed, no matter how many guards pace your halls, or how many amulets hang above your bed, darkness does not care. The first thing to change is the silence. During the day, Rome is noisy feet on stone, vendors yelling, fountains, gossip. But at night, there's a different kind of sound, more cautious, measured. It's the quiet shuffle of slaves cleaning dishes, the slap of bare feet down a hallway where they should not be walking, a cough from the atrium, a door that closes too softly to be innocent. The city sleeps, but you don't. You lie in your bed, alone or not, listening, because night is when everything can go wrong. Fire, for one, Rome burns, often, quickly. The insulae, the packed apartment blocks of the poor, are built of wood and dreams and dry hopes. All it takes is one tipped lamp, one ember, and suddenly you can smell the city dying. Even from your marble villa, you've seen the glow in the distance, the red sky, the smoke that doesn't stop. You remember one night the fire reached the Subura. You could smell hair and smoke and lemon oil from a mile away. The poor fled. The rich turned their windows. The priests said it was a sign. The emperor blamed a cult. And you watched, because what else could you do? You fear fire, yes, but you also fear what the fire hides. At night, the streets belong to the desperate, not just thieves and drunkards, but people who slip through cracks, freedmen with long memories, soldiers between postings, slaves with quiet rage, men who remember insults whispered in atriums, women who remember too much. You've heard stories. A nobleman found with his throat slit, his signet ring missing. A matron who vanished between dinner and the bath, last seen walking with a slave she thought she could trust. Even in your villa, your guards double up at night, not just to keep people out, but to keep them in. Your body slaves sleep near your door, not for service, for surveillance. Because this is when affairs happen. This is when poison is slipped into fig wine. This is when secrets, whispered on silk cushions, turn into weapon. You roll over in bed. The sheets are still warm. If someone's beside you, you don't speak. There are rules about that. There's also fear. Fear that the person in your bed tonight might not be the one you invited. Fear that the body next to yours might carry disease. Or worse, ambition. You reach for your charm, a small amulet tied around your wrist, shaped like a phallus with wings. It's ridiculous, but it's also Roman, a talisman against envy, against the evil eye, against everything the gods might send while you sleep. You close your eyes, but dreams are not an escape, not here. In Rome, even dreams are watched, interpreted, sent as messages. A white horse means change. A broken tooth means death. A dream of falling means you've lost favor. You once dreamed of drowning and woke to a scroll bearing bad news from the Senate. You remember it too clearly. You avoid eating figs before bed. They bring visions. You avoid sleeping on your back. It invites spirits. You light oil before sleep, not for light, but for warning. If it flickers wildly, something is wrong. Even your bed itself is a kind of ritual. You sleep facing east as the gods prefer. You keep your feet tucked, lest wandering ghosts brush them. The sheets are tucked around you like a shroud, not for comfort, but for control, because you know what happens when people lose control at night. You've seen it, heard it, felt it. That one senator, the one who wandered his own halls after midnight, muttering about shadows in his soup, dead by dawn. They say he drank too much. You suspect something else. That young wife who bled out in the bath, red seeping between the tiles. Everyone said it was childbirth. You saw her face. That wasn't birth. That was fear. You lie, still. The room is cold now. The braziers have been banked. The lamps burn low. You think of your ancestors. Their busts stare down at you from the alcove above the bed. Cold marble, blank eyes, faces that look like yours, only cleaner, more certain. You wonder if they feared night like this. You wonder if they whisper when you sleep, and then you hear it, a sound, not footsteps, just the breath of something not quite silent. You sit up. Listen. Nothing. Was it real? Was it imagined? In Rome, there is no difference, because night is when death walks freely. It doesn't knock. It doesn't announce itself. It slips into courtyards and hallways and bedrooms and whispers into ears. Not yet, but soon. You lie back again. You breathe. You tell yourself you're safe. You are wealthy, well-fed, guarded, loved, maybe, or useful at least. But you know what that's worth. You've seen emperors die in locked rooms. You've seen queens drink wine and drop dead. You've heard children cough twice and never breathe again. You close your eyes and say a prayer, not aloud, not to Jupiter, not to Venus, but to something older, Quieta, the kind of God that lives in corners and behind doors, the kind that listens, because tonight you would like to wake up just one more time. The oil lamp has burned out. The moon has shifted across the sky, dragging its pale light over the rooftops of Rome like a cold hand smoothing wrinkled linen. You've survived another day, another performance, another quiet war beneath the silt. And now, here in the long, lonely stretch before dawn, everything softens. Even your fear. You lie still beneath your embroidered covers, listening to the low rhythm of your breath. The villa is silent. The guards have settled. The slaves are curled in corners or on rough straw mats. The fountains have quieted to a trickle. The perfume has faded from your skin. And finally, you are alone with the truth. This life was never about pleasure. Not really. Not even for the most powerful. Especially not for them. Sex in ancient Rome, at least for royalty, was rarely about desire. It was about obligation, manipulation, legacy, power. The body, yours or anyone else's, was a tool, a weapon, a bargaining chip carved from flesh, powdered with ash, and veiled in silk. You think of the names that history remembers. Livia, who married into the Julio-Claudian line and outlived almost everyone. Nero, whose appetites were theatrical and terrifying. Messalina, the empress whose reputation swelled with every retelling, whether true or twisted. Caligula, who turned the palace into a playground and confused lust for divinity. You think of those who were used and forgotten, the lovers, unnamed, the slaves, silent, the women who bled to give birth to sons who would never know them, the men who performed strength while slowly unraveling from within. This was the hidden engine of empire, not marble, not war, not law, but bodies given, taken, promised, used. Rome dressed it all in art, in poetry, in perfume and ritual and bronze mirrors that flattered more than they reflected. But beneath all of it was the same truth that lingers even now in your quiet, sleepless mind. You were never meant to be free, not in your choices, not in your passion, not in your pleasures, even when it looked like indulgence, when you dined on flamingo tongue, when you slipped between silk sheets, when a letter arrived written in lipstick and sealed with wax. It was all part of the game, because royalty in ancient Rome doesn't get to want, it only gets to serve. Even when it's served, and still, despite it all, you made it through the day. You remembered the name, you played the parts, you smiled at your enemies and slept with your allies. You paid the right priest, punished the wrong slave, accepted the compliments, and ignored the stares, and you did not die, which, in this city, counts as victory. Outside, the wind shifts. A dog barks somewhere near the forum. A cart rattles by, carrying fresh fish toward the markets that will open before sunrise. Rome stirs again, just slightly, always hungry, never full. But you can rest now. Let your hands unclench. Let your jaw loosen. Let your heart slow its pace to something kinder. You are not in the atrium anymore, not in the Senate, not at the dinner table with its careful arrangements and unspoken promises. You are not being watched. Not tonight. Let go of the names, the debts, the glances, the mask. Let the walls fade. Let the flickering torchlight blur into nothing. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the city that never sleeps, even when you must. Because sleep, here, is not just a comfort. It is rebellion. It is release. It is the one moment in your gilded life when you are not a symbol, not a function, not a body wrapped in politics. You are just a heartbeat, a breath, a whisper in the dark, and you are still here. So tonight, as you drift off, remember you don't have to wake up in ancient Rome. Sleep well,